This is Radio Romania International. You are listening to our half-hour broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and North America, the East Coast. We can also be heard on the internet at www.rri.ro, Channel 1. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and other social media platforms. We wish you good reception conditions.
Hello, I'm Vlad Palcu with the news bulletin. Here are today's headlines. King Mihai I, the last king of Romania, was interred on Saturday in Curtea de Argeș, and a national day of mourning was observed on Sunday in Timișoara, Western Romania, in memory of the people who lost their lives during the anti-communist revolution of 1989. The last king of Romania, Mihai I, on Saturday was interred at the royal necropolis in Curtea de Argeș, southern Romania, the resting place of his wife, Queen Anna, and the other three died on December the 5th in Switzerland, aged 96. 21 cannon salvos were shot to honor Romania's Marshal and Supreme Army Commander during World War II. Tens of thousands of people paid their respects to the king at the Royal Palace in Bucharest, accompanying the funeral convoy from the palace to the train station. The funeral was in the throne room at the Royal Palace, followed by a second one in the Royal Palace Square. The coffin was laid on a gun carriage pulled by a military vehicle and transported to the Orthodox Cathedral in downtown Bucharest, where the last religious service was held. The coffin was then transported by train to Curtea de Argeș, where the final interment service was officiated. Attending the funerals were representatives of European monarchies and scores of high-ranking officials from all over the world. The government of the State of Israel shares in the grief of the Romanian family for the death of King Mihai I, a friend of the Jewish people, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said, adding that he was grateful for the royal family's role in saving Jews during the Holocaust in Romania, especially His Royal Majesty King Mihai I, who's been declared righteous among nations, a press release of the Israeli embassy in Bucharest reads. Additionally, the state funeral of King Mihai I made headlines with the main international news agencies. Televisions from all over the world broadcast images of the events held in Bucharest. According to the BBC, attending the funeral were numerous representatives of Europe's royal houses, including Prince Charles of Great Britain and the former King of Spain, Juan Carlos. King Mihai is best remembered for his decision in August 1944 to switch sides with the Allies and turn arms against Germany during the Second World War. France Press News Agency also highlights that thousands of Romanians bid farewell to their king. Since the king passed away on December the 5th, Romanians have proved their affection for their beloved king amidst popular disgruntlement with the political class, France Press also reports. A national day of mourning was decreed on Sunday in Timișoara, Western Romania, to mark 28 years since the 1989 anti-communist revolution and in memory of those who lost their lives. Religious ceremonies were held and floral tributes were paid to monuments devoted to the city's heroes. Events will continue until December 20th, Victory Day, when Timișoara will play host to a rock concert. Started out as a grassroots movement against the local authorities' abusive decisions, the revolution spread quickly across the country, leading to the demise of dictator Nicolae Ceausescu on December 22nd. Over 1,000 people were killed and nearly 3,400 were wounded over December the 16th, the 25th. Romania was the only country from the former Soviet bloc where the anti-communist revolution ended in violence, with a dictatorial couple being executed. Romania's Justice Minister Tudorel Toader has paid a visit to Malaysia, where together with Prosecutor General Tan Sri Dato Sri Haji Mohammed Abandi bin Ali signed a memorandum of understanding between the government of Romania and the government of Malaysia on. According to the Romanian Justice Ministry, the memorandum provides for various forms of cooperation, such as exchanges of legislation, experience and best practices in areas of interest, mutual visits of representatives of various justice institutions, promoting projects and programs for judicial cooperation. During his visit to Malaysia, Minister Toader had talks with Ionuț Alexandru Gologan, the Romanian citizen who received a death sentence for drug trafficking in 2012. The Romanian delegation has expressed hope that the memorandum would fulfill the two sides' interests while observing the legislation in force. EU Commissioner for Regional Policy, Romanian Corina Crețu, will pay a two-day visit to Romania on Monday. Her agenda includes meetings with Prime Minister Mihai Tudose and several members of the government. Corina Crețu will also attend a gala. Prior to her visit, Corina Crețu said Romania has made sustained efforts to implement programs funded with cohesion funds, but these efforts must continue, Corina Crețu said. And that was the news.
Dear friends, Radio Romênia International continues its traditional polling of listeners on shortwave, the internet and social media with a new challenge. We would like to ask you which person you think left their imprint on the world in a positive way in 2017. We are preparing to designate, based on your options, the personality of the year 2017 on Radio Romênia International. Will this person be a politician, an opinion maker, a businessman, an athlete, an artist, a scientist, or even a regular person with a special story? It is up to you. You can send your answers, as usual, accompanied by the reason you picked that person by commenting on our website at rri.ro, by email at engl@rri.ro, on our Facebook, Google+, Twitter, and LinkedIn profiles, by fax 21-319-0562, or by post at 60-64 General Bertlow Street, Sector 1, Bucharest, area code 010165, P.O. Box 111, Romania. The personality of the year 2016 on RI, President Donald Trump.
Coming up next, The Cooking Show.
Welcome to a new installment in the Cooking Show series with me, Elena Inake. Today we'll bring you the recipe for koliva, a ritual dessert made of boiled wheat, which is used liturgically in the Orthodox churches. While recipes may vary wildly, the primary ingredient is wheat kernels, which have been boiled until they are soft. They are drained very well and spread on a cloth to be just moist, and that's sweetened with honey or sugar. The practice of offering koliva at funerals is traditional in Greece, Cyprus, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, Russia, and the Balkan countries. Koliva was introduced in the Orthodox and commemoration of the death in the 4th century. This is related to a happening that occurred during the reign of the Roman Emperor Julian the Apostate, who, in his attempt to humiliate the Christians, that blood from pagan sacrifices be sprinkled over all the food that was sold there. Christians got wind of that, and on that day they did not buy anything from the market. They chose to eat boiled wheat with honey. Following that incident, koliva was introduced in the ritual of commemorating the dead. In the Orthodox tradition, koliva is usually brought to church together with a bottle of wine for Saturday's commemoration mass. When preparing koliva, one must observe a certain ritual. The wheat kernels must be washed in cold water 9 times before being boiled. You need 1 kilogram of wheat, half a kilo of sugar or 400 milliliters of honey, half a kilo of walnut kernels, 100 grams of raisins, vanilla essence, simple biscuits, cocoa, and white candies to decorate the koliva. Boil the wheat in salt water over low heat and boil until they get soft. Don't stir so as to avoid crushing the wheat kernels. When the wheat is boiled, remove pot from heat and leave to cool. Then drain. Next, mix the wheat with honey or sugar, with the ground walnuts, the raisins, and add a little vanilla essence and blend the ingredients until you obtain a layer of ground biscuits. Then place the mixture on the plate and level it to obtain a thickness of about 5 centimeters. Next, sprinkle with another thin layer of ground biscuits. Place a cross-shaped form on top and dust cocoa powder to obtain on the koliva. You can also decorate the koliva with candies. The koliva usually goes well with a glass of wine.
You are listening to Radio Romênia International. This is Radio Romênia International, broadcasting from Bucharest. Radio Romênia International Encyclopedia.
Hello and welcome. We are Lucramiona Simeon and Daniel Bilza, and today we'll be talking about the architectural style of Greater Romania. The union of all Romanian provinces in one state on December the 1st, 1918, triggered a cultural effervescence focused on finding and highlighting the elements specific to the Romanian civilization. In architecture, this approach led to the emergence of a new style, the Neo-Romanian style. This style became part of a trend that started taking shape in the second half of the 19th century, at the same time with the emergence of modern European states. In these newly formed nations, certain historical architecture elements were promoted. in an attempt to single out specificities of their architectural tradition. In Romania, it was architect Ion Mincu who gave the first impetus for the creation of a domestic neo-style. Ion Mincu was born around 1851 and studied at the Belle Arts University in Paris. The first characteristics of the neo-Romanian style were visible during Ion Mincu's restoration works on a private villa in Bucharest. Architect Ruxandra Nemțeanu tells us more about it.
He had the idea to give an already built house, that is, the Bucharest home of Dr. Lahovari, the aspects of a rural house specific to the Subcarpathian traditional area. Ion Mincu, after having finished his studies in Paris, had a travel scholarship to Italy, France, and Spain. One of the houses that he created, which in my opinion is his greatest work, is the Robescu house in Galați. It is in fact a mixture between the architecture that was being promoted as specific to the traditional area of Wallachia and foreign elements. Robescu House now hosts the Children's Palace in Galați. Both Lahovari House, which can be found within the precincts of the Cantacuzino Hospital in Bucharest, and Robescu House feature majolica decorations without any traditional Romanian elements. Both buildings testify to the experiments carried out at the time and the attempts to forge a new style.
Another source of inspiration can be traced in these early experiments besides Western majolica and Wallachian rural and church architecture, namely the Brâncoveanu palaces in Bucharest and in the countryside. This element dominated the new style and was taken further by the young architects that followed in Ion Mincu's steps. This period of experimentation lasted for a while, and in 1906, during a great exhibition held in Bucharest, celebrating the anniversary of the 40th year of King Carol I's reign, the exhibition pavilions already featured a new style, containing many decorative elements in the Brâncovenesque style. While Ion Mincu was the first to give an impetus to the new national style, Petre Antonescu was the architect who perfected this style. Born in 1873, he changed the appearance of the triumphal arch in Bucharest into what we see today and designed a building housing the law faculty in Bucharest. Architect Ruxandra Nemțeanu about Petre Antonescu.
I believe that he was very talented, and thanks to his skills, he managed to create an architectural style that was taken over by several younger architects who took him as an example. He is the one who created the current headquarters of the City Hall, the former office of the Public Works Ministry, with those loggias taken over from the Brâncovenesque style architecture, or inspired from the architecture of the Văcărești Monastery. What's interesting about this style is that when applied to small-scale projects, for instance, to houses or smaller buildings, as compared to multi-story buildings, the results were more spectacular and the buildings were more proportionate. This is normal because taking over elements conceived or used for smaller-scale buildings, such as the Brâncovenesque style ones, and transposing them on larger buildings would no longer give the impression of an organic, well-structured work.
Little by little, the neo-Romanian style gained recognition, and more private and public buildings were constructed in this style across the country. Nicolae Ghica Budești, Grigore Cerchez, Tomat Socolescu and Paul Smărândescu were some of the Romanian architects who adopted this style. You have been listening to Radio Romania International Encyclopedia, a feature available on rri.ro, which today was about the architectural style of Greater Romania.
up next on Radio Romênia International, Visit Romania.
Welcome to Visit Romania. I'm Mihaela Ignatescu with Călin Coțoiu. Today's stopover is Sinaia, the Pearl of the Carpathians, as it is called. It lies in Prahova's upper valley, 120 kilometers north of Bucharest, at the foot of Bucegi Mountains. It was founded as early as 1695, when nobleman Mihai Cantacuzino, impressed by what he saw in Jerusalem during a pilgrimage, decided to raise a monastery bearing the name of Mount Sinai, hence the monastery name Sinaia. Along the years, the town of the same name developed around it. Peleș Castle started being built in 1875. Nowadays, it brings to Sinaia 90% of the tourists traveling there, as we were told by Florin Burgui, a tourist guide who spoke to us about what brings foreign tourists here.
Istorie, arhitectură și interior și exterior.
It has history, architecture, a beautiful exterior and interior, stories and legends. It is very important for them to discover, in a remote corner of Europe, a unique castle. King Carol I, its builder, wanted a unique edifice and refused lots of projects before accepting the one that was eventually built. When they step into the place, they are impressed by the collection of furniture, weapons, paintings, marble, Murano glass, anything you would wish in a castle, even very modern technology such as a retractable roof, elevators, and salons with exotic themes.
The initial design of Peleș Castle was entrusted to architect Wilhelm von Doderer, a professor with Vienna's Technische Hochschule, who presented to King Carol I 3 versions for the design, inspired by French castles on the Loire Valley or Viennese edifices on Ringstrasse. However, the designs were not to the king's liking, and in 1876, the design of the building was entrusted to German architect Johannes Schulz, who drew up the blueprints for the first stage of the building between 1879 and 1883. The building is in Swiss chalet style, with 2 stories, with outside decoration in Fachwerk style. In 1884, the castle was electrified with its own generator, and in 1897 it was provided with its own electric plant. The Moorish Hall was built in 1880 based on blueprints by French architect Émile André Lecomte de Nouilly. In 1894, Czech architect Karel Liman was appointed to lead the works and coordinated the building of most rooms in the castle, such as Queen Elizabeth Chapel, the princesses' bedrooms, the marble gallery, the concert hall, the small music room, and the Queen's bathroom. The central tower of the castle was erected in 1906, and 1 year later it was endowed with the 3-dial clock, created by the tower clock factory of the Royal Court of Bavaria. Other attractions are the theatre hall, adapted to be a cinema hall also, the weapon collections, the Florentine hall, the chess room and the pool hall, and the hall with Roman emperor busts. Close to Peleș Castle you find Pelișor, in German Renaissance style, with towers covered in brightly colored tiles and 70 decorated rooms, recalling the atmosphere of the early 20th century. That was Visit Romania.
And with that, our broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and North America, the East Coast, has come to an end. You can listen to our next program for Western Europe at 23 hours UTC on 5980 and 7220 kHz. Our listeners in North America, the East Coast, can listen to us tomorrow at 1 hours UTC on 6130 and 7325 kHz. We can also be heard on the internet at www.rri.ro, channel 1. If you have any comments or suggestions, email at engl@rri.ro. Goodbye.